This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another edition of Maui Causes. Hi, I'm Sam Small. Eternal thanks to Akaku for existing in this community, giving you the opportunity to hear information that you're not likely to hear from other sources. Our standard media is very much corporate controlled, as is most of life here on Maui. It's been that way for over 125 years. The rest of the mainland is only beginning to catch up and beginning to chafe and understand the extent of corporate domination across our society. That's been the case here in the Hawaiian Islands for over 125 years. So much so that the local population thinks it's normal. And we are here to tell you that it is anything but normal. People coming from the mainland think that they're just moving to another state in the United States. And once again, Hawaii is anything but normal. The courts, the election system is fairly well skewed to support the status quo. And the only way that that is going to stop is by your participation. Thankfully, for the first time, we have candidates that are running for county council, for mayor, and for some other state positions as well, that really are dedicated to representing your best interests, your children's best interests, the best interests of the Aina, the land, the water, the natural resources that uniquely are protected in Hawaii under the public trust doctrine. You have the power to take this system back. We are in a unique position here in Hawaii, here in Maui especially, because of our small size, to have an influence, an extraordinary influence over our political system. Do not think that your vote does not count. Your vote counts. And it is by your participation in the voting process, registering to vote, coming out for the primary election, coming out for the general election, that will make all the difference here in Maui County. Very often on this show, we bring you details of how screwed up the system is, but we also balance it out with initiatives that are seeking a balanced and appropriate resolution to some of the exploitation that we've all experienced here. And we have a program for you today that will detail some of the aspects of a proposal from a group called Together for Maui. And with us here in the studio is Adrian, Raff, Corvin. Thank you for coming to speak with us today. What is your position with the Hukiliki no Maui? Together for Maui organization. What are you about?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, the Hukiliki no Maui, or Together for Maui Coalition, was started back in December 2016. Mm-hmm. I work for Sierra Club Maui Group, and we're one partner within the coalition. One of the main reasons why this coalition, why we started putting it together, it's affordable housing advocates, conservationists such as Sierra Club, and agricultural people that want local agriculture, farmers and such. Mm-hmm.
Access to land.
Yes, access to land and local resources to grow food mm-hmm. for the local population. Basically from the Sierra Club standpoint, we're oftentimes pitted against the affordable housing advocates. People complain that Sierra Club is against development. It's not that we're against development, it's that we're against development that doesn't respect the Aina, right, is doing bad things to the land. Right. And also, oftentimes, the development is going towards off-island purchasers who want a second home or something like that, and they're not housing for locals, right? And I don't think, I really don't hear in the community, people are accused of being anti-development, and I think that that's really a load of horse manure.
I don't hear any of the local organizations calling for, an end to all development. It needs to be balanced. It needs to be development that is sustainable in the long term and not just for the exclusive profits of people who are in the position to profit.
Right. And that's exactly, so within the Hukilike no Maui idea, the idea of, well, if conservationists can work with affordable housing advocates, because we have such a gigantic affordable housing crisis on this island, throughout all of Hawaii, but especially on Maui, where local families are moving away because there's nothing affordable. Nothing affordable is being built, either rentals or for purchase. But instead of us sort of always being pitted against each other, oftentimes by larger interests that want us to be against each other, instead come together to the table and meet and talk about how can we come up with a plan together that we could all agree on, and also bring in the farmers who very rightly want to have more land to grow on and to grow things for the local community. And
more water to do so.
And more water, of course. And also doing all of this in a way that is respectful both to the natural environment and also respectful to the Native Hawaiian culture, because of course certain lands have, for instance, the Waiale sand dunes, which is one area that's supposed to be, it's up for development. That should be an area that's protected, right? So to bring those...
That is the last of the last resting place of where the bones are. Your initiative is also seeking to find a way to balance things out. Tell us a little bit about this land request that you folks are making.
Sure. So, well, within the idea behind Hukilike, as we all started coming to the table, as you're talking about, it's very evident that if we stay on the path that we're currently on, the future of Maui and the future of Hawaii, but again, especially Maui, is looking quite bleak. Local families have to move away, not enough food, everything is way too expensive, and all these beautiful and important areas are just desecrated.
The tourist industry will eventually consume itself.
Eventually you have nothing left beautiful for the tourists to want to see.
We're already hearing, from plenty of tourists that after sitting in a traffic jam on the Pali, on their way to Napili to get to their hotel, they're like, why are we doing this? Why are we here? I'm not coming back.
And they hear the beautiful stories about our beautiful reefs, but our reefs are dying, and they're nothing like they used to be. And that does have partially to do with construction and runoff and not properly caring for how you do things.
Absolutely, it does.
So all of that taken into account, and yes, of course, tourism is a large portion of our economy, and so if you do want to have some tourism in the future, not taking over the island, but you want it to be a sustainable type of a tourism, that is another reason that you need to be extra careful about taking care of your resources. Right. And so through all these conversations between many, many community partners, Face Maui was one of the biggest partners on the affordable housing side, many local farmers, we did come up with ideas of where it would make sense to develop for the future and where it would make sense to make sure that certain areas were put into sort of a constant, I've forgotten the word, constant conservation. That sounds cute.
You started. You there.
And so if we can get up the map.
Yep.
So there's, on this map you can see that there are some blue areas, and that is Pu'unene area, up country and Hali'imaile, some orange areas, and then some green circles. What we came up with through a lot of conversations was the idea of, well, what if we could once again have a community, a sustainable community in Pu'unene, like there used to be a community in Pu'unene, where a large portion of the population lived, and a large portion actually, when you look back at the newspaper articles in the 1950s and 60s, when they started kicking them out of that area, out of the plantation area, people didn't actually want to leave according to the newspaper articles, but they were building Dream City in Kahului, and they were trying to get everybody out of that area. But it makes sense from an environmental standpoint. You have already the resources to hook a new community up there to the infrastructure. It is an area that is centrally located, so people can get to different areas. And it's also, of course, you can have farmland mixed in with a living community there. You could have a walkable community, bikeable community. It can have easy access over to Paia. So there's a lot of reasons why that would be a good area to have a new, because what we're really looking at is, you can have an apartment building spring up here, a condo spring up there. That's not going to cut it for the amount of affordable housing that we need for the local population. We're looking at the idea of needing really a full community. And if you want a community, well, instead of just piecemeal, building a little here, a little bit there, why don't you actually look at how to create a full community that would have, places for, of course, keiki, kupuna, different, sort of different lifestyle and different abilities, and really building on that to make it a really great place to live.
How many homes how many residences are you talking about?
Well, according to some reports, we're looking at needing up to, I think it's something like, I'm forgetting the exact figure at the top of my head at the moment, but something like 1,500 units over the next, every year over the next 10 years, sort of, to meet demand. Now, I don't know exactly where those figures come from, but it is definitely clear that, the studies show that on Oahu, you have, in a 1 to 2 bedroom, you have lots of people living, 6 people in a 2 bedroom. On Maui, it's not as well researched, but it's pretty clear that lots and lots of people
You
are
look
living.
at how many cars are parked out on the lawn and out front of any given residence as you drive through so many different communities, and it's quite clear that there are a large number of people living in each one of those homes.
Yeah, and of
that
course,
is a social pressure that is very detrimental to the community, because people don't have privacy. And they act out against one another. They act out against themselves, and drug abuse and other problems ensue. People need an appropriate amount of personal space to be able to live a comfortable life. And our economy, exploited by these corporate forces, sucking all of the resources out of our economy and leaving nothing for the local population, is driving that problem.
Yeah, there's, everything, of course. The rents are sky high, so that then the kids cannot leave once they get to a certain age. They don't make enough money to move someplace else. Of course, it's all very interconnected. And so we want to make sure that whatever we're envisioning for the future takes into account all of those types of concerns. And also the fact that there's a gigantic shortage of anyone of retirement age, retirement communities and things like that, people that might need a little bit of help. There's gigantic waiting lists, hundreds and hundreds of people deep on these waiting lists. So it means either you have to leave your home of Maui, or you have to rely on your family and, yes, live in these situations where you have too many people in one space. So that's kind of what we're considering, both in Pu'unene and then also upcountry in Hali'imaile. We recognize that, a lot of people really love living upcountry, a little bit more rural. I know I love that. And
guilty.
Yes, I think there's a lot of people that would like to, some people would of course like to live more centrally, and some people would like to live a little bit more upcountry. And so the idea of Hali'imaile is it's great agricultural land. It's some of the best land. So that might not be as large a community or as dense, but there would be maybe a mixture of housing, affordable housing with farming, et cetera, sort of a mixture. But definitely that we're looking at, those are 2 areas of the island that would have the ability to be more easily hooked up to current existing infrastructure and not create too much more of a traffic issue. It's also areas where you could have a lot more public transportation. If you had a new community in Pu'unene, but you had better public transportation between Wailuku to Paia to upcountry in the central corridor, you have so many more possibilities here to get cars off the road. If there's jobs in that area, people could walk or take a bus to their job. And so those are the places that we are looking at.
Is that those as areas of emphasis? Is that consistent with any of the island plans?
So, what's interesting about the island plans is that they were made, of course, when everyone thought sugarcane, the most recent, Maui Island plans and community plans.
Which is probably, 20 years ago?
Yeah, a lot of them are quite old now.
It was supposed to be every 10 years, but it never happened. So some of those plans are quite dated. Yeah,
the full Maui Island plan is, I think, 2011 or 2012, right? So that one's a little bit less outdated, but still, that was 7 years ago, and that was still when everyone thought sugar was going to keep going. The whole idea of sugar, leaving is only since 2016.
Right.
So all the plans were formulated around the idea of, all these Central Maui lands are just sugar.
Right.
And so in a lot of the community plans, these places were not even considered as possibilities to do community planning. Maybe a little bit in certain areas, but not much.
And this is outside of the dedicated agricultural land, because what is it, 26,000 acres that A&B had been farming is dedicated to agriculture. It can't be converted.
Yeah, the important ag lands are IAL lands. So actually the lands that we're looking at in Pu'unene and Hali'imaile, some of the acreage is not IAL land because A&B had themselves been thinking of developing it. Now A&B is now a real estate investment trust, a REIT,
right.
And they have said they're no longer looking into the idea of developing land. They're sort of thinking
for agriculture.
For housing, like the idea of building a community. They still have some projects left on the books, like in Waiale and in Central Maui, but they've said that they're not really, at least, they're not interested in building a full community, which is what we would need, and an affordable community at that.
Well, what will they do with as a real estate investment trust, how will they make money for their investors?
Well, the plan that they've come out with for this land, the most recent plan was about a year ago, right, where they were looking at diversified agriculture, which is...
As a real estate investment trust, they're not allowed to participate in agriculture. That's part of their problem, and it's part of the disconnect with what they speak in the community and the reality of things.
So they are doing some, even though they're,
As a real estate investment trust, A&B is not allowed to participate in agriculture.
And yet they are. I don't know the full understanding of how, but they are. They're sort of placeholding the land, right? They are doing things on it. They're leasing they are allowed to lease the land out. As a real estate investment trust, they're allowed to, I believe, lease the land to others who could farm it. As of right now, they are only leasing, I think, about 5,000 acres they most recently reported of their 30-something thousand. So only a small portion is actually being used. And they came out with all these plans of what else to do with all these lands, but we're not seeing a huge amount of movement on it. And that's why this comes back to our petition campaign. 15% for the future is what we're calling it. We're asking for these lands in Pu'unene and Hali'imaile areas. They make up about 5,000 acres, or about 15% of A&B's land. And we're basically asking A&B, look, you're not doing anything with this land, and we need this land for Maui's future. So give it to us, please. And we understand that in the capitalist society and the fact that they are technically the landowners, that
there are people who argue that position as well.
Yes.
There is no ultimate underlying lease for those lands.
But in the current legal system that we operate under, that they are technically the owners of the land and they have the power to do what they want with the land. Under that system, we recognize also that with their shareholders, legally there's reasons why they might not be able to just give a chunk of land, but then sell it to us at an extremely affordable price, especially considering, especially in the Pu'unene area, how much remediation is going to happen to that land in order for people to live on it safely, because there was so much pesticides and heavy metals and things from the sugar days.
All of that needs to be remediated and cleaned up.
Before people can live there and before you can do a lot of really good farming.
And that's 5 to 7 years, depending on what kind of techniques are used to extract those heavy pesticides and chemicals from the land.
And that's why we're sort of framing this under this 15% for the future, this idea of like, well, what do you want Maui to be like in 2050? Because 2050, it sounds like it's far away,
it's not.
But it's for people that are in high school right now. It's when they'll be in their 50s, right? It's really not that far away. They'll be middle-aged, the people that are in high school right now. And these changes take a lot of time, So if you need to do remediation to the land, that'll take 5 to 7 years. Well, even if we got the land tomorrow, that means 2025 is maybe when we can start, actually using this land. And so if we want to change the trajectory of Maui's future so that it's much more for the people of Maui, those changes need to happen today so that 25 years from now, we'll really start to see those changes and have a much more equitable future.
And there seems to be, some broad-based community support for this kind of thing, that A&B, holding these lands should give some of it back over to the people. Several years ago, there was a petition drive to use the eminent domain to actually condemn the land and take the land from A&B. And eminent domain is something that is not well received in the community here in Hawaii. People seem to be fearful that if the county goes in and declares eminent domain and takes the land, that could happen to them as well, that someone's going to come in and take the land. And though the petition got very close to receiving enough signatures to get on the ballot in 2016, it fell just short of having enough petition signatures. And it was still, 21,000, 22,000 signatures that were collected in support of that kind of move. This is a little bit softer request.
Yeah, I would say that, so this petition is specifically going directly to Alexander Baldwin. They have their shareholder meeting on April 24th of this month.
Coming up.
And this is sort of it, we like to say that this is sort of the beginning of a conversation, that this is where we're starting with and how we approach A and B, but depending on how the community receives it or feedback we get from the community, either the ask can change or the way we go about it can change. But it was for all of us working within the coalition, it was very clear that a lot of us were sort of, well, what should we do? Oh, we don't have the land, we need but no one was coming publicly and saying to A and B, let's start a very public conversation about the future, not just the fancy PowerPoints that you occasionally give at events, but let's have a two-way conversation between the community and A and B about what's happening here. And this is our starting place, this petition, of asking for these lands for agriculture and conservation. There's the green areas on the map are the areas that we're asking them to just give for conservation, and those include areas around Ho'okipa Beach Park and Baldwin Beach Park, two extremely beloved areas, right?
Areas.
That would be, you can't develop there anyway. They're in conservation, so just put them into conservation easement in perpetuity or give them back to the community. But they haven't even done that, and they should. And so this is a starting place, because right now, if we don't say something publicly and tell A and B what we want very explicitly, then A and B is
going to do whatever.
Yeah, they're going to do whatever they want to do, and so we're trying to make this.
They're going to make as much money as they can out of the situation. That's their business. It's their job.
Right.
I don't fault them for that. They're allowed to get away with this because we let them. And it's up to the community to step forward and to rally behind these kinds of initiatives, to show the powers that be that we have authority.
Right.
And that we will assert our authority.
And we're looking for political candidates to come out and support this kind of idea, right? This is, although we're going to present the first round of this petition at the A and B shareholder meeting later this month, it's not going to stop there. We're really looking to make this a campaign issue to ask candidates, well, would you get behind something like this and maybe help the state come up with money to buy some of this land, or make other avenues to make this a reality? Because we really need much more innovative thinking about how we want our future to look like. These piecemeal things of like, oh, well, we'll put one little affordable housing thing here. We'll have one little more small thing of some agriculture over here. That's not big picture thinking about how to make the future a much more just place and a much better place to live on Maui. Right now, it's really a struggle for many, many, many people. And so this is trying to make it less of a, not even less of a struggle, but not a struggle at all, hopefully, by 2050. So that when you have the people that are in high school right now, hopefully they won't have to move off island, but a lot of them probably will. People that are like 18 right now, there's not a huge amount of opportunity here, and there's definitely not many places for them to move. They very likely have to stay with their parents. A lot of people don't want to do that. So we're, this current generation of young people, it's almost, I don't want to say it's too late, but there's very little opportunity. We need to make it so that the people that are in preschool right now definitely can see a future staying on Maui if they want to when they're 18. And if we don't start doing that now, then the future of Maui is...
It's kind of scary.
Yeah.
It is kind of scary.
It requires a lot of long-term planning.
And it's not just the young people, because there are no facilities for elders here. Elder care is a very rare commodity here in Maui County, and there's a growing population that is going to be requiring. They don't necessarily have kids. I don't have kids. Who's going to care for me when I get infirm? How am I going to get services?
And not just services, but have a good quality of life, right? Like you could maybe, have elderly people living in their homes and someone delivers a meal, but that's not a good quality of life versus having communities, much more things, and communities that would be walkable for elderly, right? Like right now, it's very hard to find that.
And integrated communities, more and more we're seeing young people come to Maui for the idyllic lifestyle that's here, the environment and just this gorgeousness that is the Hawaiian the climate. And the whole environment. And they know that they're, as individuals, never going to own their own home. There's too much debt. They're not going to be able to own their own home.
And the prices are so high.
And the prices are so high. So they're coming to Maui, and they're coming together into small communities, banding together and working, finding land that they can farm. They don't want to do anything else. They're not looking to have this big, New York glorious lifestyle. They're happy to be able to have a piece of land that they can farm in a small cooperative setting, live in concert with other people. And there's a great opportunity for that to be balanced, so that you have young people and you have elderly people that are living in communion with one another. We have little hippie communes, for everybody.
Well, it is true that, not everyone wants to live in a hippie commune, I understand that, but there's definitely different models.
But take the word hippie off of it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with an integrated living situation where you have young people and elderly people interacting and living amongst one another, in support of one another.
And I hear a lot of times people say, oh, well, people, once they start farming, they don't realize how hard it was and they don't want to be farmers once they realize. And I think that that's a very negative perspective. And also, it's not taking into account different model possibilities. The idea of well, I will have one job that I work 30 hours a week, and then I will have 10 hours where I work on a farm and I get free produce in return for my work or something, right? You can have lots of opportunities where you have some people that are full-time farmers, but a lot of people that just volunteer some time and get food in return that's affordable. And I think I know I would love to, work maybe 5-10 hours a week on a farm, but not maybe my whole life. And I think there's a lot of people out there of all different age ranges. And so, those are the types of models we need to be looking at, that when we talk about agriculture and housing, that there's so many opportunities for different types of commune-type situations, or farmers market, shares, those kinds of things, that if we had more land and more long-term planning, we could do a lot of really amazing things.
Yeah, and Maui is exactly the kind of community that can pull something like that off. We can make that kind of thing happen here and be an example for other communities as well. Maui often leads the way.
Yeah.
There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.
So if this land were to be bestowed by A&B onto the community, what is the entity that would receive the land, and how would that get managed? Is that something that's still in development? If we get the land, we'll figure out the rest of it?
Yeah, that's an extremely important question, and it's something that we within the coalition puzzled over for months and months. Well, if we ask for this land, who's going to control it? What's, all the considerations, right? And we finally decided, we don't have the answers. But that shouldn't stop us from going public and saying, A&B, this is what we want, because if we try to get all those details tied neatly in a bow beforehand, we'll probably never go public.
Well, and it's a tiered, like any other land development project, it is a multi-tiered process. And, it is, yes, those answers are ultimately required, but you don't necessarily have to have them today. Yeah. You need to acquire the land. This is actually one of the historic loopholes that drains value out of our county tax coffers, is that the county administration is not required to secure all of the land for an infrastructure project before they spend all of the development money up front. They will pay for, conceptual and detailed architectural drawings of a project that they don't have the land rights for. They jump over that tiered process. It should be, just as you guys are doing, that you conceptualize it, present that, and have a whole bunch of unanswered questions. Based on the willingness of the proposal, you secure the land. Once you have the land, you then spend all of the additional development money and energies to fully flesh out the program. Instead, unfortunately, here in Maui County, the administration just goes ahead and spends all the money up front. And they never acquire the land. And all of that money, taxpayers' money, is wasted. And they do it time and time again, because the particular individuals that are controlling Maui County's administration are land development people, and they are friends with land development professionals. And this is their way to allow their friends to benefit at the expense of everybody else.
Well, it definitely is true. Like Sierra Club Maui, oftentimes when we do go up against developments, it's because they come up with, all these plans that don't take into account all the environmental and cultural factors that should be taken into account, and then we have to sort of battle to have those things taken into account. Because yes, they're not taken into account as the first thing, they're taken into account when we force them to take it into account. And that's exactly, you're right, what we're trying to do. The opposite procedure this time. We say we want this land, but we haven't come up with all the details. We have a few things. We've specifically these land areas, as I explained, we think that they're probably best from an infrastructure and environmental standpoint. And they're areas that people have voiced that they're interested in living and working in. One thing, if the state or the county were to buy the land, the county, if it buys agricultural land and makes a county ag park, right now the regulations are such that, the laws are such that you can't really have farmers living on that land, and farmers really want to live on the land. With a state ag park, they can. So unless the county changes those laws, we would want it to be state ag park versus county ag park, right? So but of course, county can change the laws.
Right, it's just based on current laws.
So if the government wanted to buy the land, if a land trust wants to buy the land, as long as whoever buys the land listens to the community, those that have been a part of the Hukilike Coalition, and anyone that wants to join the coalition and really voice concerns, as long as they're listening to the people and doing what will benefit the people and always listening to the people, then we're not as wedded to who buys the land as long as the results are beneficial.
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah. So people can go to togetherformaui.org to sign the petition. I have a...
Takes a second, hit the space bar.
There we go. Okay. So togetherformaui.org, if anybody wants to sign the petition, the full text of the petition is there along with the map for more information. And we're trying for at least 1,000 to 2,000 signatures by April 24th, when we're going to go to A&B and present it to them.
Great. Have there been any feedback from A&B on this so far?
Not yet. It is interesting. The minute we did go public, definitely more people started to call us and things, but so far not A&B. We'll see what they say. We haven't gotten anything negative back yet.
What other organizations are you linked to?
Sure. Well, so far, community partners that have signed on to the petition are Ma Lama Lama Maui, which is part of Sweet Pea Services. Maui Tomorrow, I believe, is in the process of signing on. Shaka Movement has signed on. Kihei Community Association has signed on. Face Maui has signed on. Surfrider Maui has signed on. Sierra Club Maui has signed on. And we're in the process of getting about 10 to 15 more local organizations at least to sign on before April 24th, boards have to vote, whether they approve to sign on. So the list will definitely grow over the next 2 weeks.
Well, we can certainly grow that list. You can add Maui Causes
Okay,
to your list. We've got
We'll
a lovely
add Maui
little heart-shaped logo
Oh, yes.
that
Lovely.
We represent a fair number of individuals in the Maui community, subscribe to our newsletters and our websites and watch this very show. That's what we're here for, is to be able to present these kinds of ideas to the community so that we can have progressive and appropriate change. We describe this show as being a positive disruption to the status quo. And that is a necessary process in a free democracy. As business interests become entrenched, and individuals as politicians become entrenched in a political and economic system, the tendency is for their perspective to skew towards the benefit of the large money interests and away from the community's needs.
Yeah.
And nowhere is that more evident and prevalent than here in Hawaii, and here on Maui specifically, because even our state government hardly thinks that Maui exists.
When you look at what happened on Oahu, a lot of the sugarcane land and the former, big agriculture land, how so much of it is, not being used. That's a worry of, not only do we need all of this that we've been talking about for Maui's future, but if A&B just sort of parks the land and does nothing with it for 10 years, this land, we need it for Maui. Even if we don't build sustainable communities like we would like, we need the agricultural land. And when you look at what's happened to Oahu, even though Oahu, the central government, the state government is over there, they have not been pressuring their landowners of the former sugarcane lands to do what's necessary over there. And you just have a lot of land that's parked, and its abilities are wasted.
This proposal for land, is there water attached to this land?
Well, that of course gets into one of the controversies of A&B land, right? Of course, the only reason why this land really has any value at all is because A&B has had access to the East Maui irrigation, East Maui streams. And as of right now, there's still the state water commission is still out on how much water they're going to let A&B continue to take from the streams.
Their last request was for a 30-year lease?
That's currently out there. Their draft EIS, Environmental Impact Statement, is asking for a 30-year lease.
That's insane.
And I think they've come out with the EIS prep notice. They have not come out with the draft EIS at this point, I believe. Yes, I think that's correct. I'll have to go double check. But they're asking for a 30-year lease. And on top of that, in the interim, right, the interim flow standards of how much water. So it remains to be seen whether A&B will keep the rights to the rights to the water. I mean, right now it's being, every year their leases are being renewed to keep this water. If the state does the right thing and says, well, look, you're not even using this water to grow anything, you don't need this water, this land will become basically worthless to A&B if they don't have the water rights. Because you can't do anything on it without water. Now, of course,
neither agriculture or residential.
Yeah. And Hukilike No Maui Coalition is very aware of the injustices to the streams, and we wouldn't want to take, we wouldn't want to at all continue the legacy of A&B by taking too much water. We would, if this plan were to go forward, we would say, well, we would want a certain amount of water, ask permission to take that from the East Maui streams to help get this going, but in a much more respectful and responsible manner, and only take, what we would need to get this agriculture and community moving, and definitely investing in, types of agriculture that do not waste water. A lot of what A&B was doing on their agricultural land is, parking water banking, and not, using water respectfully. They were just taking everything that they could possibly take. And so in the future, if there was agriculture, community agriculture in Central Maui and community first in Central Maui, we would, be very respectful about asking for some of that water to be used in the valley.
Makes
And
total sense.
only
It
what
has-
we would need, absolutely need. And make sure all the streams are flowing, right? Never take too much from any one stream, because right now, still, some of the streams are dry.
Right. Well, it is. It's all about finding balance.
Yeah, that balance. That is what we need, and what we have not had.
So again, how can people reach you?
Togetherformaui.org is the website, and that's where you can read the full petition and sign it right there on the front page. You can forward that. You can also, on Sierra Club Maui's Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Sierra Club Maui, you can find posts that you can share to people and let them know about the petition. And we're trying to get at least another 1,000 people to sign in the next 2 weeks. So we really encourage everyone to go to togetherformaui.org, read more about the petition, sign it, and share it with your friends.
Sweet. What else can you tell us about it? We've got a few minutes left.
Okay.
How many signatures do you have so far?
We have currently about 500 signatures. The petition has been live about 2 weeks.
Oh, it's not very long.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good
not very
count
long.
for a local initiative. It's
local,
very hard to
yeah.
get the public engaged in stuff like this.
Well, also, one thing about this petition is I fully recognize, for lack of a better word, it's not the sexiest sounding petition. It's not a give us all of your land, or right, and there's definitely, I completely recognize and understand that some people see this petition as controversial because we're not specifically saying to A and B, like, just give us the land, this is not your land. We're going about this in a more respectful to A and B sort of phrasing, right?
The existing
status quo,
laws, right?
The existing laws, and I completely respect and understand that some people don't want to sign this petition because it is not demanding of A and B the land and things like that. But in our current climate of trying to get something to move forward, and to really have a community conversation, we have to start from one place where both sides are willing to come to the table. And so we see this petition ask is completely reasonable. 15% of the land, 5,000 acres. We're not asking for everything. We're asking for what we would really need to get a good start for Maui's future. And at the same time, it's respecting the current status quo. And if others want to start poking at that status quo, it's not that the Hu'ilike no Maui Coalition would be against that, but this is our starting point.
Right.
It's our first iteration of what we're asking for.
Right. And that's very parallel to just the entire electoral process. There are many people in this community that have refused for generations to vote,
Right.
Because they did not want to legitimatize what they considered to be an illegitimate system. But it is the existing system. It's what we have today.
Right.
And if, Trinette Furtado is very often says, if we wait any longer, even if there were any kind of reinstatement of Hawaiian authority, there's not going to be anything left.
Right.
It will all have been just, ruined and polluted.
And they will give it back to you when it's a shell when they don't want it any longer. That's when they will say, oh yeah, you can have it because it's worth nothing and it's ugly now and the tourists won't come and we don't need it. And that's when they will give it back to you.
Right. But we have an opportunity, I think, in this community to something was lit in 2014 with the GM moratorium. And that was something that, a lot of people, that was a sexy thing because, environmental pollution exposure to experimental open field testing of chemical cocktails, gets people's attention. And even, separated from the genetic modification issue of people's concerns with GMO engineered crops, the pesticide, the ancillary pesticide massive use, especially in the experimentation phases,
so much
that's happening upfield, upwind from where people live here. And so that was a strong rallying cry for the community to come together. And in promoting the Shaka GM moratorium, people flocked to it because they saw the value. They were fearful of a chemical future.
Right.
So these issues are, indeed, as you said, are a little bit less sexy.
This is a hopeful future. I think oftentimes the scariness of a future sometimes can bring people out, right? You don't want it to be a pesticide wasteland. It can really, the fear can motivate people. What we're asking for is a little bit more proactive. What we're doing is, and proactiveness sort of futures work, trying to imagine a future that you want and really bringing people into the fold to really push for that future. Oftentimes it's harder for people to imagine that hopeful future and how to get there, and it doesn't bring as many people's passions out.
Right.
And so I encourage everyone that goes to togetherformaui.org and tells their friends about this to talk about really why this should be a sexy issue, even though it's not as, it doesn't bring as many people in, but it should. And that's what we're trying to work on. How do we bring more people into this to be proactive on planning? Because a lot of times, yes, we're acting as firefighters. Something bad is happening, and we say, no, don't do that. And
there's a role for that.
There's a role for that.
But we also, that's what's so unique, it seems to me, at this particular point in time, is that we have an opportunity to solve the underlying systemic flaws that bring the fire, that allow the fire to get started.
Exactly.
We wouldn't have to be putting out those kinds of fires if we are able to change the underlying system. And that deals, explicitly here in Maui County, that deals with the Planning Commission and the plan, and our county councils. Our county council has been stripped of all authority over the Planning Commission. Planning Commission is completely appointed by the mayor. The planning director is empowered. Public Works is empowered by the Planning Commission. They all work for the mayor. Whoever's elected mayor controls everything down below. Everything that goes on down below. And, it's not just, I think it's not just, we'll be lucky if we get a mayor and a county council that agree on the sustainability issue to be able to have an impact. That could all switch 4 years later. Right. And so we need to press and have the politicians that we do support understand that if we're voting for them, we're voting for the full Monty, the full level of change. It's not just, let's take this corrupt system and use it for for someone else's advantage for a change. We have to change the entire system that our government plays under so that it is transparent. It is a modern metropolis instead of a good old boy, backroom deal environment. And I would say, to add to that, yes, you have to work to change. But yeah, it's a constant battle that even once you've changed it for a short period of time, they will always come back and change. The big money interests are not going away. It's not going to go. So even if it's a constant engagement process. You can never stop engaging. Right. And this petition is partially about really trying to get people engaged, but if the petition is not your boat, if you don't like it, we still really encourage people to, of course, engage in the political process. Whoever is voted in November will have a big impact on Maui's future. Yep. And I think that, especially if we are able to actualize any form of a professional town manager, then that changes the way that directors are hired, so that they're not political appointees of the mayor, that they are true professionals and have professional experience in the field that they are assuming responsibility for. A director is supposed to be the most experienced person in the room, and the way that our system currently works, that is not the case. Yeah. And we need to change that. But whomever that first town manager is who is responsible for hiring the new directors for departments. It's going to have a tremendous amount of impact over the direction of this county for the next 10, 20 years, because you'll be hiring people that are not short-term replaced every 4 years.
Right.
They're not beholden to the mayor. They'll be beholden to the county council through a professional town manager.
Yeah, if we can get that passed.
And that's a very big social issue here in Maui County, and hopefully the county council will be bringing that yet another round of ordinances forward, looking for charter revision to be able to actually literally change the structure of our county government.
Yeah.
Kelly King is working on such a proposal, and hopefully that will be brought to the county council in a very short period of time. If the council sees fit, hopefully they will. If track record is anything, they may not. They may just try and kill it. But it'll, if they do, then it shows you that this community needs to rally behind progressive candidates who are willing to make that commitment to this kind of change. We talk about that they're not going away. There's a revolving door, of directors and land development professionals. And they have a very different opinion over, what should be going on here. They're very dedicated to, providing profits to a particular group of investors. And every time that, historically, the mechanisms by which they exploit our system were, taken away from them. In 2011, Joanne Johnson was a county council member who actively worked to remove the 3-lot or less subdivision deferral agreements. It was a particular mechanism that the Planning Department and Public Works had been, and Corporation Council had been using for decades to allow developers to skirt their responsibilities, to shift their financial burdens onto the backs of the taxpayers. So in 2011, it was actually taken away. In 2015, a version of it was brought back. And it was done so without public scrutiny. It was done so under the Upcountry Water Bill in 2015 that Gladys Baisha was the chair and streamlined this Upcountry Water Bill, which was originally supposed to be to the benefit of only families on the Upcountry water meter list. The theory was that they had been suffering for years waiting for their water meters, and that the county should give them back a little something and make it a little bit easier for them to do a small subdivision, 2 lots or less. And it was originally intended for the upcountry community. At the very last minute, the language that Corporation Council actually generated and inserted into the bill made no mention of upcountry. And so I think, many of the council members, I believe, were not even aware of it. But the 2015 Upcountry Water Bill established a 2-lot exemption that is being used island-wide. A and B received a roadway exemption for 1,200 acres along Pu'unene and Dairy Road, which probably will be developed for commercial, application. It's right there in downtown Kahului. There's really no public scrutiny or public understanding that this major corporation has received that kind of gift, a giveaway, from the planning department and public works. And there are hundreds of projects that have been. I think there are hundreds. Planning won't even tell us how many conditional subdivision approvals they've given. They won't even say. So I think the number is very large. This is a entitlement, a financial benefit that I believe many developers that had projects in the works pulled their papers back. So that they could reformulate their proposal, their land development deal, to be able to fit into this 2-parcel or less subdivision exemption. It represents a tremendous savings. And if the past is any indication of the future, even though this entitlement is only supposed to be a one-time thing, the deferral agreements from years and years and years ago, they were also supposed to be a one-time thing, and nobody kept records. And nobody tracked it, and so the planning department and public works allowed developers to reapply and reapply. What was ever only supposed to be 3 lots turned into 6, 8, and 9 lots or more if they brought a condominium into one of those lots. So that was completely subverting other county ordinances that require any subdivision that is 4 lots or more, they must pay all of their roadway infrastructure improvements. They must do that work as part of their subdivision development. So we have ordinances, we have rules that are supposed to be in place, and then we have rules that allow those in the know to subvert those rules. And that kind of, this is the point, is that those big money interests are not going away. Yeah. And they will come back and reassert themselves in some other way to get back what they think is their entitlement to their short-term profits, always, always, always at the expense of the public. Adrian, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Thank you to the Together for Maui organization for this iteration of a request to AMB to do something for the community, allow land to be transferred into some form of community trust for development that would include low-income housing. Let's hope that the community backs this. Please go to their website and sign this petition.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thank you once again, Adrian. Appreciate it very much. Join us next week on Maui Causes. Aloha.
This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.